Hey guys, tonight we drift back to the lantern-lit alleys of Edo, what you now call Tokyo, on a quiet, moon-polished night when the city's day fades not into silence, but into steam, noodle broth, and the soft clatter of chopsticks. You're not in a tea house or a palace, but right on the dirt-packed street, under a makeshift roof of oil paper and pine slats, beside a vendor who barely says a word, but whose pot has been simmering since sundown. Somewhere behind you, the night watch clangs a wooden rattle, distant and lazy. The curfew bells are long past, and those who remain outside now do so for food, not trouble. And you? You're just hungry. Probably won't survive this culinary time travel, honestly, but at least you'll sleep full. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to drop your location and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far and wide we wander together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin by simply walking. That's how most evenings unfold in Edo. No rush, no clear destination. The city at night is not asleep, exactly. It's just reclining, letting out its belt buckle, so to speak. During the day, the streets are all urgency and errands, apprentices and officials, samurai in stiff hakama skirts marching to duty. But at this hour, with the stars peeking timidly through the haze, the pace softens. You wander slowly, more guided by aroma than intention. The air smells of rice and charcoal, fish and fermented something or other, and soy sauce. Always soy sauce. It seems to seep from the very walls. You pass by a few closed shutters, homes with no signs, paper doors drawn tight, the interior glow, soft and golden. Occasionally, the faint rhythm of shamisen strings wafts through the walls, barely audible, but steady, like a heartbeat for the street. You're walking in geita, those wooden sandals that make a gentle clack with every step, a sort of rhythmic reminder that you're still in motion. They're not comfortable, but they serve a purpose. Keep your feet out of the muck. Remind everyone where you are, too. In fact, in some neighborhoods, people can tell who's coming just by the tempo of the clack. Fast? Probably a courier. Slow and uneven? Tipsy merchant. Silent? Ninja or cat.
You're somewhere in the outer wards now, where residential and commercial districts blend, where noodle carts start to appear just after the shutters come down. These aren't fancy establishments, just wood-wheeled stalls pulled into place each evening, often by the vendor themselves, their backs curved like question marks after a long haul. They park under lanterns, prop up awnings, and hang narrow red flags with bold calligraphy, symbols for soba or udon, or just the warm promise of something hot. The lanterns sway gently, their glow soft but certain. Oil-fed, they hiss faintly. Each one is a small sun, tethered to the wooden ribs of the cart by frayed twine. Some are hand-painted with little motifs, pine needles, leaping carp, autumn leaves, and orange ink. Others bear nothing but a price, ichimo, 1 man, a single copper coin. It's not much. It buys you warmth, flavor, and a moment of rest. And at this hour, that's a bargain. You linger near one such cart now. It's wedged beside a dry goods shop whose owner is already snoring inside, unaware or unconcerned. The vendor nods once, slowly, without greeting. No need for pleasantries. Your hunger speaks clearly. You sit on the stool, which wobbles once and then accepts your weight like an old friend resigned to your habits. Before you speak, the vendor is already reaching. He grabs a bundle of noodles with fingers trained by repetition, drops them into the bubbling pot. The steam rises fast, fragrant, curling around your face like a warm scarf. You don't ask what kind of broth it is. There's no menu, but you can smell dashi, the stock made from dried bonito flakes and kelp. It's earthy and marine all at once, grounding and slightly mysterious. You swear there's a whisper of ginger in there too, though it could just be wishful thinking. As you wait, your eyes begin to adjust to the peculiar rhythm of late-night Edo. It's not loud, but it's not silent either. Insects chirp from the dark corners. A dog somewhere barks half-heartedly, then thinks better of it. The occasional footsteps pass behind you, quick and private. Everyone who walks this street knows it belongs to Noodles after dark. Anyone looking for mischief has gone elsewhere, probably toward the bridges or the theater quarters. But here, in this narrow corridor of warmth and starch, the only crimes are oversalted broth and stingy portions. Your bowl arrives. It's simple. Ceramic, with a chip on the rim. Inside, the noodles are thin and a little uneven, clearly handmade, probably just this morning. The broth is light brown, shimmering faintly in the lantern light. A slice of green onion floats lazily near a piece of tempura that may have once been a vegetable. There's no spoon, just chopsticks, and a small wooden rest where you can place them, should you be patient enough to stop eating mid-bite. You won't. The first taste is always the same: heat. Not spice, but temperature. It fills your mouth and climbs your sinuses, forcing your eyes to half close. Then the salt hits, then the umami, then the chew of noodle, soft, but with the faintest resistance. A little drama for your teeth. The tempura soggy, but that's expected. In fact, it's preferred. It's given itself to the broth like a martyr to flavor. You eat slowly, not because you're pacing yourself, but because your body insists on savoring this moment. You're not alone. At the far edge of the cart, another customer slurps quietly, head bowed. Could be a rice peddler. Could be a wandering priest. Could be an amateur poet, hoping the steam will grant him a verse. No one asks, no one explains. This quiet communion of late-night eaters is a feature of Edo life that modern scholars often miss. Yes, the city was vibrant. Yes, it was the world's largest urban center by population in the 18th century. But the heartbeat of Edo was not in the palaces or the shogunate offices. It was in these silent meals, these humble bowls, shared without pretense beneath the soft hiss of lanterns. And yet historians still argue whether these carts were fully legal. Some records suggest permits were required, issued by district authorities who wanted to monitor nighttime gatherings. Others hint that enforcement was flexible. Perhaps vendors paid bribes, or perhaps no one really wanted to stop them. After all, even the city's constables needed noodles now and then. You finish the broth. The bottom of the bowl holds nothing but a few errant scallions and a tiny crack that runs like a river delta. The vendor takes it from you with one hand, wipes it with a cloth that has seen too many bowls, and returns it to the stack beside him. You reach into your sleeve and pull out a single mon. It's warm from your body heat. You place it on the cart's edge. No change is expected, no receipt. The vendor nods again, just once. And then, the next person steps forward. You rise slowly, your knees creaking in protest, and step back into the night. The smell of soy and smoke clings to your sleeve like a fond farewell. The lantern behind you flickers once and returns to its calm glow. You've had your first taste, but the alley calls you deeper. And this night, it's far from over.
You walk again, not because you're still hungry, but because that's just what the city invites you to do. Edo at midnight is like a long, slow exhale. The streets empty out, but they don't go silent. Instead, they hum gently, wood creaking, oil lanterns sputtering, distant voices murmuring like low wind through bamboo. Your geta clack along the cobblestones, the rhythm easy now, like the beat of a song you forgot you knew. You don't have a map. There is no need. Your nose, your ears, and your curiosity will do just fine. The air shifts slightly as you pass each block. Here it smells like pickled daikon. There a hint of grilled eel sneaks through a crack in a shutter. Some houses have shut tightly against the night, paper doors pulled snug, families dreaming of taxes, marriages, and rice yields. Others keep a lantern burning near the entrance, perhaps waiting for a husband's return or simply defying darkness with stubborn light.
You pass a row of shops with wooden signs, their calligraphy elegant and playful. A brush maker, a paper dealer, a tea merchant whose banner flaps lazily in the breeze. Above, tiny second-story balconies peek from behind latticed wood. Some are strung with drying herbs or hanging garments. Others host sleepy cats who blink slowly at your passing and decide you're no threat. Down one narrow lane, tucked just behind a low sake house, you hear it, the bubbling whisper of another noodle cart being prepared. You drift toward it without meaning to. This one is smaller, barely large enough to hold its pot and ingredients. The vendor stands bent over, his back toward you, his frame wrapped in a short indigo robe stained with broth rings. His hair is bound up in the loose topknot of someone who gave up on appearances hours ago. He doesn't turn around, doesn't speak. You watch for a moment. He moves like someone who's done this thousands of times, no wasted effort, no flourish. He lifts the ladle, tests the broth, frowns slightly, then adds a pinch of something from a tiny cloth-wrapped pouch. Could be dried kelp, could be magic. Rather than disturb him, you simply sit at one of the squat wooden stools. This cart doesn't have a sign, doesn't need one. The smell alone does the talking. Eventually, he places a shallow wooden tray in front of you. No bow this time. Just a plate of cold, soba noodles, delicately arranged like a nest, topped with finely chopped green onion and a dab of grated daikon. A tiny dipping cup of tsuyu rests beside it. Soy sauce, mirin, and dashi, all balanced in a potion designed to wake your tongue without waking your soul. You dip.
You slurp, you sigh. It's exactly what you didn't know you needed. After the heat and broth of your last bowl, this is a contrast. Cool, clean, focused. Like someone handed you a haiku on a plate. The noodles have that earthy buckwheat bite, slightly gritty in a good way, like they remember the field they came from. The dipping sauce is sharp, salty sweet, and just shy of bitter. Together, it wakes you up, just a little. Not enough to undo your drowsiness, but enough to make you feel like your mouth has done something noble. The vendor finally speaks, his voice rasped from steam and smoke. Not many choose cold soba at night, he says, not as a judgment, but as an observation. You nod, mouth full, and raise your chopsticks like a toast. He snorts gently, possibly a laugh, and goes back to his pot. You glance down the street and notice a man stumbling slightly, walking with the unsteady precision of someone trying very hard not to appear drunk. His robes are too formal for this hour, black and embroidered with a crest on the back. A minor official, perhaps, or someone pretending to be one. He stops in front of the cart, blinks at you, then bows deeply, perhaps more than necessary. "I smell noodles," he declares, voice rich and dramatic. The vendor doesn't answer. He simply places another tray down and begins preparing a bowl. The newcomer sits beside you, adjusting his robe like a person who forgot how chairs work. He smells of plum wine and expensive incense, possibly also regret. His eyes wander. "You know," he says to no one in particular, "the shogun once declared that no noodle cart shall obstruct foot traffic." You raise an eyebrow. He continues, eyes half-lidded. "Historians still argue whether that law was ever enforced. But I think some rules are better broken, especially when miso is involved." The vendor places a steaming bowl in front of him. It's thicker this time, cloudy and golden, with seaweed and tofu floating like lazy ships in a gentle sea. He slurps, loudly, then sighs. Rule breaking is delicious. You share a small chuckle, the kind that belongs only to two strangers sitting elbow to elbow at a roadside stall in a city that never quite sleeps. No introductions, no names, just noodles and the understanding that time, for this brief moment, doesn't matter.
The man eats quickly, the kind of speed reserved for those who fear the soberness of a clean bowl. You take your time. The dipping sauce has warmed slightly now, less biting, more mellow. You drink the last sip directly from the cup, ignoring the etiquette you never learned properly. Somewhere nearby, a group of women passes, whispering and laughing behind painted fans. Their footsteps are light,
their hair adorned with kanzashi pins that glint briefly in the lantern light. One of them glances your way and smiles, not flirtatiously, just kindly, like someone recognizing another wanderer in the night. The drunk official, or faux official, has finished. He bows to the vendor, fumbles in his sleeve, and produces a small silver coin, far more than the cost of the bowl. The vendor eyes it briefly, then nods, accepting it without fuss. Generosity is not questioned in Edo. It's respected, and occasionally chuckled over once the patron walks away. And walk away he does, staggering slightly less than before, his path lit by moonlight and possibly miso-fueled clarity. You remain seated for a while longer, feeling the breeze shift gently through the alley. It carries the scent of pine and river silt, a reminder that Edo is, after all, a city of water, crisscrossed by canals and rivers, fed by tides and rain, surrounded by wet whispers. You close your eyes for just a second, letting the air cool your cheeks and the sounds of the street fold into each other. The cart vendor says nothing more. He simply wipes down the tray, stacks a few bowls, adjusts the cloth on his shoulder. A rhythm, like a ritual. As if by feeding you, he has honored something ancient and quiet, an agreement made long ago between wanderer and cook. You stand slowly, offering a shallow bow. This time, instead of coins, you place a small charm on the edge of the cart, a carved wooden token in the shape of a ginkgo leaf. It's not currency, it's not expected, but the vendor nods just the same. You walk away, heart steady, belly warm, breath visible in the night air. Behind you, the pot continues to bubble. Ahead, the streets of Edo open wide once more, inviting your footsteps deeper into their quiet, savory mystery.
The path ahead narrows, the kind of winding alley that seems to coil deeper into the city's belly the longer you follow it. The moon above leans between two tiled rooftops, its light catching the glimmer of dew forming along the wooden eaves. You walk slowly, not out of caution, but because Edo, at this hour, herbal soap. For a moment, you picture the warmth still clinging to the benches inside, the towels hung out to dry. Then the image fades, replaced by the more pressing presence of a row of small carts just ahead. There's a cluster of them tonight, maybe 5 or 6, lined up like old friends huddled for warmth. Each one is different in design, but similar in purpose. Wooden wheels, wide pot openings, paper screens stretched across the top to shield the vendor from the mist. A little street food commune, alive in the hours where the rest of the world lies between dreams. As you draw closer, the air thickens with scent. Grilled fish crackling on a clay brazier, a thick soy-based tear sauce dripping and hissing into flame, and the unmistakable aroma of miso simmering with something leafy. The carts are not arranged formally. There's no rule. They simply gather, night after night, like migratory birds returning to the same patch of sky. You realize this is where the real late-night economy of Edo happens. Not in coin or goods, but in steam, stories, and the casual exchange of company. You choose a cart at the far end, partly because the lantern above it glows with a slight pink hue, and partly because it's a little removed from the others, quietly confident in its own draw. The vendor here is younger, maybe in his 30s, but with the expression of someone who has already seen every kind of customer pass through: drunkards, scholars, lovers, monks. And now, you. Udon? He asks, voice crisp but kind. You're not. He doesn't wait for further input. The noodles are already half cooked, kept in a wooden box by the steam's edge. He lifts a serving with practiced grace, dips them into a bubbling pot, then spoons out broth from a different kettle. You watch the layering. Noodles first, then broth, then a spoonful of simmered mushrooms, a pinch of mustard greens, and finally a soft boiled egg sliced cleanly in two. The yolk glows like lantern light. He places the bowl in front of you with a short nod, then turns to serve the next customer. A boy in apprentice robes, no older than 14, carrying a bundle of fabric in the sleepy posture of someone who's been running errands since noon. The boy pays with 2 coins and a small button. The vendor pockets the coins and pins the button to a cloth strip along the cart's side. Apparently, barter is part of the culture here. You cradle your bowl and take a sip of the broth. It's rich, thicker than the dashi from earlier, with a nutty depth that clings to your tongue. The mushrooms bring an earthy whisper. The greens offer a slight bitterness, enough to wake you up just a bit. And the noodles? They're plump and yielding, like they've absorbed not just flavor but memory. Every slurp feels like a small ceremony.
The apprentice beside you slurps loudly and without shame. He catches your eye and grins through a mouthful of noodle. "Been running from my master since sunset," he says. He thinks I'm at the printmaker's. You smile, because there's nothing to say to that. Just the shared understanding between someone who escaped duty for a bowl of noodles and someone who escaped time itself to witness it. As you eat, more people arrive. A trio of elderly women, their gray hair tied in identical buns, perch together on a bench behind the carts and share one bowl between them, each taking delicate bites as if performing tea ceremony in reverse. A tall man with a straw hat and a sleeveless vest stands to your right and eats while standing, only removing the hat when a breeze threatens to blow it off. The hum of conversation is low, almost reverent. It's not that people don't speak, it's that they speak softly, like in a temple. Or perhaps this is their temple, a sacred place where warmth is ladled out and the night is kept at bay. A thin cat slips between your feet, not begging, not meowing, just passing through like it owns the alley. Its fur is patchy, but its gait is regal. The vendor doesn't acknowledge it, but you see a small dish placed near the cart's base containing rice and a sliver of mackerel. Clearly, the cat is on the regular guest list. You're halfway through your bowl when a loud voice breaks the rhythm. "Too much salt again, Tamayana!" A short, stout man strides up to the neighboring cart, hands on hips, voice echoing off the closed shutters. The vendor there, one of the older twins known as the Tamayana brothers, rolls his eyes and retorts without looking up. "You keep showing up. Must like it salty." The stout man grumbles, then chuckles, and plops onto a stool with the force of a thunderclap. It's all theater, and everyone around seems in on the joke. The Tamayana cart is the noisy one. Theirs is where the debates happen, the gossip swirls, the laughter rises. A foil to the gentle solemnity of your vendor's station. You hear a snippet of their exchange. "I tell you, miso is supposed to be strong." "It's supposed to be balanced, you doughhead. That's why you're still single." Laughter ripples outward like broth spreading over a shallow bowl. Someone claps, someone else coughs while laughing too hard. Your own vendor remains unbothered. He slices pickles on a wooden board, silent and precise. You finish your noodles slowly, letting the last of the broth linger on your tongue. There's a subtle sweetness at the bottom. Perhaps a dash of mirin the vendor slipped in while you weren't watching. A reward for patience, or a reminder not to rush. You pay with 2 coins, and, inspired by the apprentice, leave behind a small, folded paper crane. The vendor doesn't react, but as you walk away, you see him gently set it on the edge of the cart, facing outward like a tiny watching sentinel. The alley hums behind you. The bowls clink, the lanterns sway, and your feet move forward once more, guided now not just by scent or sound, but by the quiet pulse of a city that seems to dream while awake. Edo at night is not a place, it's a feeling, one you're just beginning to understand.
You leave the warmth of the noodle carts behind and step back into the deeper veins of the city, where the lights grow sparser and the night thickens like slowly stirred mochi. The alley bends again, and then again, as if reluctant to reveal what comes next. You pass a narrow canal lined with stone, where water whispers against its own banks. A lantern floats lazily by, drifting on a tiny wooden raft no larger than a soup bowl. Someone must have set it adrift for luck or love, or maybe just for the joy of watching light bob along a dark current. Your feet carry you over a short wooden bridge. It creaks slightly, not threateningly, just enough to remind you that every structure in Edo has a voice. Nothing is ever truly silent. Even stillness breathes. The street opens up on the other side, wider now, with low buildings flanking both sides and smoke rising faintly from a chimney in the distance. And there, standing proud beneath a pine tree gnarled by time and stubbornness, is another yatai cart. This one is set apart, with a kind of quiet gravitas. Not flashy, not colorful, just right. You approach, drawn by something that's not scent this time but sound, a soft rhythmic scraping, like someone stirring rice at a thoughtful pace. The vendor here is older, much older. His back is curved, not hunched, but bowed with intention, like a monk in eternal prayer. His hands are large and calm, with fingers that move slowly but deliberately, as if every movement carries its own philosophy. He doesn't greet you, just nods, then motions for you to sit on a bench made of a single worn plank. No stool this time. You settle in, the wood still warm from the last customer. You watch him work. The pot in front of him is smaller than the others you've seen. The flame beneath it is low, barely more than a whisper. Whatever's cooking isn't boiling. It's steeping, gently, as though even heat should be treated with respect. He lifts a ladle and stirs once, then twice. The contents shimmer in the firelight. Small chunks of tofu, radish, konjac, and something that looks suspiciously like fish cake, but shaped into a perfect spiral. "Oden," he says at last, his voice like rustling paper. You nod. You know Oden, but somehow this feels like a different kind of knowing. Not the dish, but the moment around it. He places a shallow ceramic bowl in front of you, the contents carefully arranged like a tiny edible garden. No garnish, no flair, just food, honest and simple. You take a bite. The daikon is impossibly tender, almost melting on your tongue. The tofu holds the broth like a sponge, releasing its warmth slowly. The konjac is firm and chewy, offering contrast. And that spiral fish cake? Slightly sweet, with a touch of smoke, as though it remembered being near a flame, but never feared it. You eat in silence. So does the man seated 2 places down from you, a samurai by the look of him, though without his blades, as is custom in the inner city at night. His robes are thick, striped, and dusted with ash, possibly from tending to a hearth, or perhaps something less domestic.
He glances over. "Best oden in Edo," he says simply, even if he won't admit it. The old vendor snorts, not disagreeing. The samurai sips from a small cup of tea and gestures to the trees behind the cart. "People think Edo is all noise and paper lanterns," he says. "But it was once just this. Trees, quiet, rice and water." You nod, mouthful of tofu. He's right. Beneath the wooden shingles and bustling canals, the heart of Edo is still farmland, still memory, still a slow-cooked bowl shared under an open sky. The samurai pauses, then leans slightly closer. "They say the recipe for this broth came from the wife of a wandering poet," he murmurs, voice lowered to near conspiratorial levels. "She brewed it while he wrote verses about river fog. When he died, she gave up words and opened this cart." You glance at the vendor. He doesn't react. Historians still argue whether the story's true, the samurai adds. But then, maybe it doesn't matter. You sip the broth, now cooling slightly at the rim. He's right again. Truth has a way of tasting better when you stop demanding proof. A soft clink draws your attention. A new customer has arrived, a woman with silver in her hair and a bundle wrapped in cloth, cradled in her arms. She places the bundle beside her and sits without a word. The vendor greets her with a smile, his first, you notice, and begins preparing a bowl. From the bundle, a soft cry emerges. Ah, not a bundle, a baby. wrapped snugly and dozing again almost immediately after the cry. The woman eats with one hand, slowly, spooning broth and tofu between quiet breaths. The baby sleeps. The samurai says nothing more. And you just keep eating. The sky has deepened further, if such a thing is possible. Not black, but ink-brushed, like the background of an old scroll painting. The lantern near the cart dins a bit, its oil burning low. A soft wind tugs gently at the pine needles above, and a single one falls, landing beside your bowl. You take this as a sign to finish. You rise, placing your coins in the small wooden tray near the vendor's elbow. He doesn't count them, doesn't even glance, just nods once, the same way he did when you arrived. You bow, more deeply this time. The samurai offers a half salute with his teacup. The baby sighs in its sleep, and the oden, it lingers, not on your tongue, but in your chest, a warmth that spreads outward like ripples on water. You turn to leave, your footsteps quieter now, as if you're trying not to wake the city. You don't look back. You don't need to. That cart, that pine, that bowl, they're all part of you now. They'll still be there tomorrow night and the next, and maybe forever. Edo doesn't forget those who come hungry and leave full. It just waits patiently for them to return. You carry the warmth of the oden with you like a second layer of skin, a hush wrapped around your bones. The alley behind fades into the quiet embrace of trees, lantern light giving way to moonlight. You're not quite sure how late it is now. Edo doesn't have clocks on every wall or bells to mark the hours at night, but your footsteps have softened, and even your thoughts seem to have taken their sandals off. You wander past a bamboo fence, the stalks tall and leaning, creaking faintly as if whispering old gossip to each other. Beyond it is a small shrine, unattended, simple, and nestled behind a curtain of willow branches. You step closer, offer a polite nod, just in case any spirits are watching. There's no one here, but incense still smolders faintly on the stone basin. Someone else came by earlier and left an orange. The peel has begun to dry, curling at the edges like a sleeping cat. A tiny, chubby tanuki statue sits beside the offering, smiling up at you with round eyes and a flask in one paw. You tap its head lightly for good luck, because why not? No one's judging. The night, if anything, encourages superstition. You walk again, and soon the sound of a shamisen reaches your ears, thin and twangy, yet unmistakable. It draws you toward a small crossroads where three streets meet like chopsticks at rest. There, beneath a faded Noren curtain, sits a tea house that never quite closes. It's not the kind that serves dainty sweets or polite conversation. This one's for workers, couriers, and the occasional philosopher who's had one too many. The building leans slightly, as if listening to itself. A paper lantern dangles overhead, its characters too faded to read. The scent drifting from within is not noodles or soup, but grilled rice balls, smoky and sweet. You duck inside. The space is cramped, but clean. A single woman works behind the counter, sleeves tied back, her hair up in a silk wrap that's seen many moons. She glances up and offers a nod that means, sit wherever. So you do. On the load table in front of you are two menus written in delicate brushstrokes. You can't read most of it, but that's not the point. A plate of grilled onigiri arrives without you asking, and a cup of roasted barley tea follows right after. The rice balls are seared just right, crispy edges with soft middles. A brushing of soy sauce gives them that rich umami crust. You pick one up, and it radiates warmth through your fingers. You take a bite, and suddenly, it's not just food anymore. It's memory of fields and smoke, and someone's grandmother who probably invented this recipe by accident when she left rice too close to the fire. You sip your tea. It's nutty and bitter in the best way, like it's been toasted just enough to carry a memory of summer fields.
No sweetness here. No need. The bitterness balances the rice perfectly, like the yin to a carb-laden yang. At the far end of the room, a man in a faded blue robe plucks at a shamisen. He's not particularly skilled, but that's fine. He plays slow and low, letting the notes drift like fallen petals. His song has no chorus, no verses, just long stretches of tone that seem to stretch the night itself.
A courier stumbles in, his sandals worn to the threads, and drops onto a cushion across from you with a grateful groan. His face is sunburnt, eyes sunken, but he smiles when the onigiri arrive. Left Kyoto 3 days ago, he mutters between bites. Horses gave out halfway. Feet did the rest. You nod, not out of obligation, but because it seems right. Here, no one needs to explain why they're tired. It's just understood. He pulls out a pouch and empties a few coins onto the table, along with a small slip of parchment with a red seal. Whatever message it carried, it's delivered now. He finishes his tea and sighs. You ever try the egg custard here? He asks. You shake your head. Don't. It'll ruin you for all others. He grins, then leans back and closes his eyes. Not asleep, just resting. Like a stone warmed by the sun, finally allowed to cool. You return to your rice, letting each bite fill not just your stomach, but your entire sense of being. It's funny how something as plain as rice, charred and salted, can become an anchor in a drifting world. The shopkeeper approaches with a small dish, pickled burdock and carrot, thin as threads. Palate cleanser, she says. You thank her. The pickles are sharp, almost spicy, cutting through the richness like a sudden breeze on a summer night. They remind you not to get too comfortable. Or maybe they just remind you that food, like life, should have contrast. The shamisen stops. The player takes a sip of his tea, then starts a different tune. Lighter now, playful, like the sound a cat would make if it had strings. The courier cluckles. Ah, that one. My mother used to hum that while scolding me. You both laugh. Not loudly, not disruptively, just a shared chuckle that fades into the wood of the table. Outside, the wind picks up. You can hear it tugging at the norin, flapping the curtain like it wants in on the story. The tea house lights dim slightly. Maybe it's the oil running low, or maybe it's just the night reaching deeper into its own pocket. You realize it's time to move on, not because anyone's asking you to, but because the moment is complete. Some meals end with dessert. Some end with silence. This one ends with a satisfied breath and the rustle of coins on a wooden tray. You rise, bow. The shopkeeper nods once, then turns to refill the teapot. Outside, the air feels different again. Cooler, quieter, like even the wind is beginning to tire. You take one last look at the tea house before turning down the next street. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then nothing. Your feet carry you forward, now guided by not just hunger, by something deeper. Not nostalgia, not even curiosity, just rhythm. The rhythm of Edo at midnight, the heartbeat of noodles, tea, grilled rice, and borrowed stories. And you're still hungry, not for food, but for the next moment. You follow that rhythm down a lane narrower than the width of your outstretched arms, where only the slimmest of lanterns dare to hang. Their faint glow cast elongated shadows on the earthen walls, making every bump in the plaster look like a sleeping spirit. Overhead, drying laundry sways gently. Even at this hour, some families are still tending to life's smallest details. The scent that greets you now is different. Less broth, more char. It hits your nose with that unmistakable signature of something grilled over open flame. Sweet miso, maybe, or soy-glazed fish skin. You quicken your pace a little, as if your stomach and feet have conspired to override your sleepy limbs. And there it is, another yatai. This one tucked beneath a maple tree, its leaves fluttering like gossiping fans. The cart is different from the others, not just in shape, but in aura. There's a sign on the front, drawn in playful brushstrokes that reads something like Sumiya's Fire Sticks. You pause. Fire sticks? You step closer, greeted by the sound of sizzling. The vendor is a woman, perhaps in her late 40s, wearing a bright orange yukata with white crane motifs. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, and her hands move like she's conducting a symphony made of skewers. Yakitori? She asks, lifting one eyebrow and pointing a chopstick at you like a gentle threat. You nod, because at this point, refusal would be foolish. You take a seat on a short stool beside the cart. The bench still radiates a gentle warmth, not from fire, but from the bodies who came before you. There's a half-empty bottle of shochu beside your seat. Someone's forgotten confidant. She plucks 3 skewers from a tray and places them over the flame with the casual grace of someone who's done it every night for 20 years. Chicken thigh, skin, and liver. An edible trio of textures, glazed with a sticky house sauce that smells like secrets and mischief. As the skewers char, she hums an old lullaby. You don't know the lyrics, but the tune is vaguely familiar, like something heard through a paper wall during childhood. A customer beside you, already halfway through his second skewer, raises his cup of sake in your direction. First time? He asks. You nod. You're in for it then. He's a scholar by the look of him. Rounded glasses, ink stains on his sleeve, and the kind of slouch that comes from years bent over scrolls. He chomps into a piece of chicken skin like it's the first meal he's had in a week. They say Sumiya's sauce comes from the ashes of the Great Fire, carried it from her last cart which burned to the ground with half the block. You glance at the vendor. She shrugs without confirming or denying. Historians still argue whether that story is true, but fire, my friend, fire has memory. The skewers are ready. Sumiya places them on a narrow bamboo tray and slides it toward you with a flick of her chopsticks. No fanfare, just perfection. You take your first bite. The chicken thigh is tender, almost buttery, with a caramelized edge that makes your eyes close without permission. The skin, crispy, fatty, and shameless, melts in your mouth like the crackle of fireworks. The liver is rich, intense, and slightly bitter, grounding you in the earth while everything else lifts you toward the stars. You sip the sake offered by your new scholar friend. It burns slightly, but only in the best way, like a candle flame held in your chest. Sumiya adds more skewers to the grill. One has a quail egg wrapped in bacon. Another is just shishito peppers and salt. She speaks suddenly, without turning. You want to know the secret? You blink. She doesn't wait for an answer. It's the smoke, not the sauce. Everyone talks about sauce, but it's the wood. You glance at the small stack beside her cart. Some kind of fruit wood, you think. Pear or plum. Every piece soaked in mirin before burning, she adds. The fire remembers sweetness. That's what matters. You nod solemnly, as if this is a spiritual revelation. And maybe, in its way, it is. Behind you, 2 men in laborers' vests laugh over something you missed. One gestures animatedly with a half-eaten skewer, nearly slapping his friend in the face. No one minds. Laughter is currency here.
A dog, fluffy, gray, and clearly in charge, sits beneath the cart, occasionally glancing up for scraps. It gets one, a pepper. It seems satisfied. The scholar lights a pipe and exhales with a sigh. "Did you know," he says, "that there was a brief time during the Genroku period when yakitori was banned in certain districts? They said the smell made people forget their duties." He chuckles. "Imagine that, a government afraid of grilled chicken." You laugh too, because yes, it's ridiculous, but also because it makes sense. If anything could make someone abandon a task, it's this smell, this taste, this exact moment. You finish your skewers slowly, savoring the last bits as if chewing through the layers of the night itself. The scholar stands, bows clumsily, and stumbles off down the street, muttering something about poetry and deadlines. Sumi replaces the coals, humming again. She doesn't look at you, but speaks. "Come back in spring," she says. "The fire's different then." You nod, not because you know what that means, but because it sounds like something you'd like to find out. You pay, bow again, and slip back into the night. The wind has picked up slightly, rustling the leaves of the maple tree in short bursts. Overhead, a single star has managed to peek through the haze. It blinks slowly, like it's watching you from the other side of time. You walk on, your fingers still smelling of smoke and sauce, your belly full, your mind pleasantly fogged. You've moved past hunger now. You're in the phase where taste lingers not on the tongue, but in memory. Somewhere, a temple bell rings, distant, low and round. One chime, maybe two. And that's when it hits you. This isn't just about food. This is how Edo dreams, with miso, with fire, with skewers passed from hand to hand, carrying warmth from one soul to another. And here you are, still walking, still discovering, still part of the dream.
You follow the echo of that temple bell, drifting as though your feet have ceased to belong to you entirely. They seem to know the rhythm better than your mind does. Each step takes you further from the flame-licked skewers and deeper into the velvet folds of Edo's midnight. The roads are uneven now, older, and the shadows here wear thicker coats. A narrow brook appears beside the road, its trickle barely audible over the soft crunch of gravel underfoot. A crooked wooden plank serves as a bridge, no railing, just trust and balance. You cross it slowly, letting your weight settle on each foot like a poem taking shape one syllable at a time. The street that greets you on the other side is quieter still. No carts, no laughter, just rows of wooden buildings with paper shutters drawn tight and roofs that slope like tired backs. This is where the city sleeps in earnest. You wonder if you should turn back. But then the wind shifts, and with it comes a sense so delicate it almost tricks you into thinking you imagined it. Something faintly sweet, like cinnamon bark, but also earthy, like chestnuts in old rice sacks. Intrigued, you follow it. Soon you find the source, a low, open-fronted shop, half hidden behind a flowering bush that really has no business blooming at this hour. There's no sign, no menu, no lantern, just a flickering candle in a stone box, and the unmistakable sound of someone grating something, slow, repetitive, patient. You step into the doorway. Inside is a single man, seated cross-legged on the floor behind a square brazier. He looks up, surprised, but not displeased. His kimono is faded to almost white, and he wears round spectacles that catch the firelight like twin moons. "You're late," he says simply. You blink. "Everyone is," he adds with a faint smile. "Come." You sit. There's no stool, no cushion, just a woven mat that smells faintly of straw and smoke. On the brazier, a cast iron pan simmers with something thick and dark. Ozoni, maybe, or a cousin of it. He stirs it with a flat wooden paddle, then opens a small lidded bowl beside him and lifts out something soft and round. A rice cake.
toasted until golden. He places it into the simmering broth with the reverence of a priest placing an offering. Oshiruko, he says, sweet red bean soup with grilled mochi. You raise an eyebrow. For late stomachs, he explains, and stubborn hearts. He ladles some into a bowl and slides it toward you. The aroma is gentle, familiar in a way you can't quite place. You take a spoonful. The soup is thick, smooth, just the right side of sweet. The mochi yields under your spoon, chewy and just crisp at the edges where it met the fire. It clings to your teeth in the most comforting way, like it's trying not to be swallowed too fast.
It used to be a New Year's dish, he says, watching the fire flicker. But these days, who waits for a calendar? You nod. Time in Edo doesn't march, it drifts. He begins preparing a second bowl, this one with a dollop of chestnut paste folded into the red bean. You glance around the room, walls lined with neatly stacked lacquer boxes, a scroll hanging on the far end that reads nothing more than patience. Fitting. You're not from here, he observes. You shake your head. You're not either, he adds, as if continuing your thought. You're from wherever your last memory happened. You consider this. It sounds like the kind of thing a philosopher would say if they were also very good at dessert. He pours tea. Not the sharp bitterness of roasted barley, but a soft, nutty brew, like roasted brown rice steeped in moonlight. It tastes like a whisper. You sip slowly, alternating between the tea and spoonfuls of oshiruko. The mochi melts and reforms again in your mouth, each bite a quiet insistence that the night is not yet over. Another customer arrives. A boy no older than 12, hair sticking up in places, kimono sleeves too long. He bows, murmurs a thank you, and is handed a small clay pot with a lid. He cradles it like it contains treasure, then vanishes into the night again. His grandmother can't sleep unless she has a bite of this. Old habits. You nod again. The fire pops softly. Historians still argue whether oshiruko began as peasant food or imperial treat, but either way, everyone ends up with a bowl eventually. You swirl your spoon through the last of the soup. It leaves a soft trail, like brushwork on silk. You wonder if anyone's ever written poetry about red bean paste. You suspect yes. The man offers you a second helping. You decline, not because you're full, but because you want to remember the flavor without drowning it. He doesn't seem offended. Instead, he picks up a folded paper and begins carefully writing something with a brush pen, the strokes slow and deliberate. You watch in silence. Outside, the wind has shifted again. The petals on the bush rustle like tiny paper cranes. You rise. He looks up only briefly. Come again when the moon is smaller, he says. You don't ask what that means. Some instructions aren't meant to be clarified. You bow. He bows. You step out into the street again. Your footsteps are even softer now. The mochi has rooted itself somewhere deep in your belly, where it glows gently like a coal in winter. You're not cold anymore. Not tired either. Just here. Entirely. And Edo continues to breathe with you. Even the silences feel like company. You drift along a road that seems narrower than before, lined with shuttered storefronts and sleeping rooftops. The wooden slats creak faintly in the breeze, and somewhere above you, a loose tile taps a steady beat. Tap. Pause. Tap. Like an old man thinking. Your steps match it. Or maybe it's the other way around. The scent of red bean still lingers on your tongue, but now it blends with something sharper, saltier. Soy? Maybe seaweed. You glance toward a side alley, just barely lit by the pale curve of the moon. A banner flutters there, loose and frayed at the edges, painted with a single kanji too faded to decipher. Beneath it, a stand low to the ground, no larger than a cabinet, manned by a figure crouched like a frog beside a boiling pot. It's not elegant. It's not even really clean, but it smells divine. You step closer, hesitating only slightly, and the crouched figure looks up with a gap-toothed grin. His face is lined, deeply, like a map of rivers. His hair sticks out wildly from beneath a cloth tied like a headband. "You've got the eyes of someone who doesn't know what they want," he says, gruff but not unkind. You shrug. He gestures toward the pot. "Nimono," he says simply. "Simmered things." That's vague, but your curiosity is piqued. You sit on the upturned crate he offers, and he ladles a scoop from the pot into a chipped ceramic bowl. The contents are humble: a chunk of daikon radish, a piece of tofu, a wedge of boiled egg, and something that might be konnyaku, its gray jelly surface flecked with black specks. Steam coils upward, carrying with it the deep, earthy scent of dashi broth and years of repetition. You take a bite. The daikon collapses under your teeth, utterly saturated with broth. It tastes like a secret kept warm for you. The tofu is silky, its edges slightly brown from being near the bottom of the pot. The egg, well, it tastes like truth. Soft, yolky truth. And the konnyaku, chewy, strange, slightly bitter, a reminder that not everything needs to be comfortable to be good. The vendor leans back, sipping from a metal cup. His breath fogs faintly in the night. "Used to be a monk," he says, without invitation. "Or at least I wore the robes." You glance at him, waiting for more. "Monks don't eat meat, but the stomach's a better theologian than the tongue." You chuckle softly. He smiles again. "People come here when the world's too much," he says, ladling out another scoop, this time for a man with a torn sleeve who's just arrived. "And when it's too little." The man nods silently, his eyes hollow but grateful. The vendor sprinkles something over your bowl, shichimi togarashi, the 7-spice blend. You inhale and feel your sinuses wake up like startled birds. "Want to know something funny?" the old man says, eyes twinkling. "Historians still argue whether Nimono started in the temples or the brothels. Either way, it's stuck." He laughs, a gravelly thing that rattles the air like a wooden drum. More customers trickle in. A night soil collector with cracked fingernails. A woman with a baby tied to her back, the child asleep and warm beneath layers of cloth. An elderly couple who don't speak to each other, but share every bite with practiced gestures. Each is handed a bowl. Each finds silence in its depths. You sip the broth slowly. It's not thick, it's not rich, but it carries weight. Like water drawn from a well that remembers everyone who ever leaned over it. The baby stirs and the mother hushes her gently, then takes a bite of daikon and closes her eyes. Her exhaustion doesn't fade, but it shifts, lightens, just slightly. The old man leans forward again. "You know what the broth remembers?" he asks. You raise an eyebrow. "Every night," he says, "every single one. The fat from the tofu last week, the salt from the pickles someone dropped in on accident, the tears from the merchant who just lost his shop. It all stays." You look at the pot, suddenly aware of its depth, not just physical, but emotional. It simmers like memory itself. He hands you a second helping. This time, there's a carrot cut into the shape of a flower. "Don't mistake pretty for soft," he warns. "That one's been stewing all day." You bite. It's sweet, but also dense, firm in its middle like it's hiding something. You like it. A young samurai walks past, sword at his hip, expression unreadable. He pauses,
sniffs the air, almost steps forward, but then continues on, boots striking the dirt with perfect discipline. "He'll be back," the old man mutters. You smile. Someone starts singing softly. One of the older women. It's a lullaby, or maybe just a hum that turned into something more. The melody wraps itself around you like the steam from the pot, slow and circular. Used to be, folks thought this kind of food healed you. Not just sickness, heartbreak, shame, pride. You finish your bowl and set it down carefully. He nods, collecting it without a word. The others around you don't speak much. They don't need to. This place is its own kind of language. You stand, your knees stiff from sitting on the crate. The vendor wipes his hands on a cloth and bows. Not deeply, but with genuine gravity. Come back when you forget something. The pot remembers. You bow back, then turn down another street. The steam from the pot trails after you like a scent that isn't quite finished. And now the night feels quieter again. Not empty, just content.
The path ahead tilts slightly uphill, the stones underfoot worn smooth by centuries of souls pacing the same gentle incline. Your breath settles into a quiet rhythm, no longer sharp with appetite or thought. Instead, it draws in the scent of wet wood, faded incense, and that ever-present thread of soy drifting faintly from some distant kitchen. As you reach the top of the rise, the city seems to flatten before you, as if Edo has taken a slow exhale. Lanterns in the distance blink like sleepy fireflies, scattered along winding alleys and tucked in low-hanging eaves. You pause, letting your gaze trace the rooftops, curved and layered like the folds of a silk fan, before something catches your eye. It's a gathering, a small one, maybe 6 or 7 people, clustered around what looks like a kettle? You drift closer. There's no cart, no shop, just a wooden platform beneath a sagging plum tree and a squat woman in a striped kimono tending a single charcoal brazier. She doesn't sell food, it seems. She brews it, and everyone around her holds a porcelain bowl in their hands, cradled like it's holding more than just liquid. You sit quietly at the edge. No one speaks. The woman nods once, acknowledging your presence, then continues her work. Her hair is pulled into a low bun, with wisps escaping around her ears, and her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, in the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly how long each leaf must steep. From her basket, she pulls a ladle and scoops out a portion of thick, viscous liquid from a large covered jar. It's not tea. Miso soup, she murmurs, as if reading your mind. Late-night blend, fermented for 2 years. The bowl she passes to you is simple, unglazed, a little chipped, but warm to the touch. You bring it close and inhale. It smells like aged wood, softened onions, and something deeper, almost smoky. You take a sip. It's nothing like the miso soup you know. This is darker, bolder, with a sharp fermented bite that makes your lips tingle and your chest hum. There are thin slices of burdock root, soft strands of negi, and a whisper of ginger just at the edge of awareness. The broth clings to your tongue like it has a story to tell. They used to make this for night watchmen, men too tired to chew, too cold to think. You take another sip and feel it reach somewhere beneath your ribs, like a warm hand pressed gently against your lungs. They say miso strengthens your spirit. Not the body, no, the part deeper than that. Around you, the others sip slowly. One of them, a courier by the look of his stained sash and leather sandals, lets out a long, satisfied sigh and leans back against the trunk of the plum tree.
Historians still argue whether miso came from the mainland or was born right here in the rice paddies, she says with a smile. But Edo folks don't care much about origin stories, only how it ends up in the bowl. You glance at the other jars by her side, each marked with a symbol, some with the kanji for barley or rice, others with more obscure glyphs you can't quite read. One bowl finishes, she pours another. They say there's a miso for every mood, she says. Salty for anger, sweet for loss, bitter for longing. And this one, she lifts the ladle, letting it drip slowly. This one's for those who aren't sure what they feel. You smile into your bowl because that might be the most accurate description of your current state. Someone chuckles gently from the edge of the circle. A man with deep lines around his mouth and eyes that shimmer with too much memory. "She's right," he says. "My wife made a miso like this when we lost our daughter. Said it helped her remember to breathe." The words hover in the air, soft but solid. No one says anything for a moment. The woman nods, ladling more soup. The man sips. Everyone sips. A bird chirps, confused by the light maybe, or stirred by the scent. You take another sip, and the warmth doesn't just spread through your chest, it settles behind your eyes, loosening something you didn't know was clenched. The silence here isn't heavy, it's shared, woven like cloth from breath, steam, and memory. The woman sits down for the first time, crossing her legs beside the brazier. She says there's a theory, as she adjusts a log in the coals, that miso doesn't just preserve food, it preserves people. When the famine came, people lived on this. When the earthquakes came, when the fires, one bowl and they could keep going. She scoops another bowl and hands it to a newcomer, a girl no older than 14, hair in braids, a sleeping kitten tucked into her sash. The kitten stirs, sniffs the air, and settles again. Even the animals know where warmth lives. You finish your soup and gently rest the bowl on the platform. The woman reaches for it, but pauses. "Come back next full moon," she says. "That's when I bring out the sweet white miso." You nod, even though you don't know if you'll still be here. But promises made under midnight steam feel heavier than most. The others begin to drift away, each offering a small bow or whisper of thanks. You rise as well, your body relaxed in a way it hasn't been for what feels like weeks. You bow to the woman. "Thank you." She nods once. The road down the hill seems softer than the one up. The stones are still there. The wind still rustles the paper banners strung across the alleyways, but everything feels a little more forgiving. Your breath is slower, your step more measured, as if the miso has rearranged something vital inside you. Edo sleeps around you, not entirely, but enough, and the night keeps serving bowls of itself, one ladle at a time.
The night seems to stretch wider now, not darker, just deeper. The kind of depth that feels less like falling and more like being wrapped in an old futon, heavy with memory, creased with age, and warm in places that shouldn't be warm. You walk without really choosing a direction, following the rhythm of distant shutters rattling in the breeze and the occasional snore from behind a paper-thin wall. The street opens up again, unexpectedly, into what looks like a courtyard. Not grand, not even particularly clean, just a forgotten space between buildings, where weeds grow undisturbed and the stones are uneven. And right in the middle of it, someone's placed a folding table. On top, a small brazier, a stack of tiny ceramic bowls, and a collection of ingredients that look like they were stolen from a garden and a pantry during a polite argument. Behind the table stands a man with a long mustache that curves upward at the ends as though it's trying to smile independently of his face.
He's tall, wiry, and wears an apron splattered with something. Honestly, you don't want to ask. He greets you with a low bow and an exaggerated flourish of a ladle. "Welcome, traveler of the tongue," he says dramatically. "You have found the land of tamago zosui." You blink. "Egg rice soup," he clarifies. "But don't let the simplicity fool you." He lifts a bowl, drizzles something clear and golden into it from a teapot, and then whisks it furiously with chopsticks. The result? A cloudy, frothy liquid that smells faintly of chicken and poetry. You sit. "You've come at a good hour," he says. "The rice has been soaking for 6." He pours the hot broth into a shallow pot and adds a scoop of the soaked rice, watching it swell and soften with exaggerated reverence. A pinch of salt, a twist of something herbal, shiso, perhaps, and a splash of vinegar so precise it feels choreographed. Then the egg. He breaks it not with a crack, but a gentle tap, like a monk waking another monk. The yolk slips into the soup, and he whisks again, slower now, until the liquid becomes creamy, almost silken, and not a single strand of egg white survives intact. He pours it into a bowl and places it before you, with both hands as if handing over a newborn. You lift the bowl and sip. Oh. It's warm, but not aggressively so. The kind of warm that belongs to bathwater on a winter morning. The rice has softened into gentle lumps, little clouds bobbing in an amber sea. The yolk smooths the edges of the salt, and the shiso sings from somewhere in the background like a shy musician. "You know," he says, leaning on the table, "tamago zosui was once considered the food of the weak. Sick children, tired elders, the defeated."
You pause, spoon midair. "Now it's for the wise," he adds with a wink. "Those smart enough to rest before they break." You smile and take another spoonful. The rice dissolves almost before you can chew, and the broth lingers at the back of your throat like a lullaby. Historians still argue whether this dish descended from porridge brought by Chinese monks, or was invented by accident when someone spilled tea into leftover rice, he muses. Either way, it became the punctuation mark of the Edo diet. A young woman arrives, her apron stained with what you suspect is ink, and he begins preparing another bowl. She murmurs thanks without looking up. He asks no questions, just cracks another egg with the same solemn care. To your left, a man with soot on his hands and sleeves watches the steam rise from his own bowl. He eats slowly, reverently, like someone making peace with a day that offered no victories. The cook pours himself a small bowl and sits across from you. "You'd be surprised," he says, "how many swordsmen have sat where you're sitting, always at this hour, always hungry in the quietest way." You don't reply, not because you disagree, but because your mouth is full of the final spoonful of broth, and it seems a shame to speak over it. The woman beside you finishes her bowl, wipes her lips with her sleeve, and nods at the cook. "Same time tomorrow?" He nods. She vanishes into the night. The soot-covered man follows shortly after, and then it's just you, the cook, and the steam swirling between you. He gathers the empty bowls and stacks them in silence. "You know," he says, after a long pause, "people think night food is about indulgence, but it's really about comfort." He tosses a tiny piece of kombu into the now empty pot and lets it hiss quietly on the heat. During the day, food has a job. It has to energize, impress, compete. But at night, he smiles, at night, food can just be kind. You look at the pot, still steaming softly, and feel a curious sense of gratitude, not just for the soup, but for the notion that something as small as warm rice and egg could carry centuries of comfort in a single bowl.
You stand. He does not. Come back, he says, when you've lost count of how many bowls you've had. You bow. A deep one. He bows in return, but only with his head, just enough to acknowledge your respect without drawing attention to it. You step away from the folding table. The courtyard feels different now, less empty, like it's storing warmth in its flagstones, waiting for the next hungry stranger to stumble through. And as you return to the street, a soft breeze lifts the smell of egg and rice behind you. It follows you, like a memory, already half faded, but promising to return if summoned. Edo waits, and somewhere ahead, the next bowl of something forgotten waits to be remembered.
The street curves lazily to the right, just beyond where the Tamago Zosui stand fades from view. The lanterns here are fewer, the silence more pronounced. Even the cats seem to tiptoe. You follow a narrow passage between buildings, its wooden walls close enough that your elbows occasionally graze them. The path opens onto a quieter neighborhood. No inns, no brothels, not even the hum of gamblers tossing dice in the shadows. Just old homes with low walls, their windows shut tight, and the faint sound of water trickling somewhere nearby. You head toward that sound, carried along by instinct, or maybe it's the lingering warmth from the egg soup nudging you forward. Your feet find stone steps leading downward into a sunken courtyard, lit by a single oil lamp dangling from a string. At the base of the steps sits an old man hunched over a griddle, the kind that looks like it's been seasoned since the dawn of time. Next to him, stacked neatly in wooden trays, are rows of round dumplings skewered on bamboo sticks. He doesn't look up when you approach, just turns a few of the dumplings with practiced fingers, the soy glaze sizzling and bubbling as it hits the hot metal. The smell hits you like a polite slap. Sweet, salty, just a hint of char. Mitari dango, he mumbles, as though the words have trouble escaping his mouth. 3 for 3 mon. You drop a few coins into the cup by his feet, and he gestures to a small bench. You sit. He picks up a skewer and holds it over the flame for a second longer, letting the glaze caramelize until it clings in sticky ribbons. Then he hands it to you. The first bite is toothsome, the rice flour dumpling springy, almost elastic, but yielding after a moment. The glaze is perfect. Sweet like a memory, salty like an old wound, smoky like the corner of a dream. People like the ones from Ueno better, fancier, softer, but they don't hold together after midnight. You chew slowly, savoring the gentle fight in the texture. The glaze coats your lips. You don't wipe it away. There's a theory, he says after a pause, that dango were first made as offerings for the moon. You glance up, and indeed, the moon hangs full and low in the sky, framed neatly between 2 rooftops. It feels close enough to bite. Historians still argue whether mitarashi sauce came from temple festivals or roadside mistakes. But what matters is balance. Not too much soy, not too much sugar, and never burn the sauce. A group of children passes by on silent feet, perhaps returning from an errand. One of them waves at the old man, who doesn't wave back, but does slide another skewer onto the grill. The child grins and holds up 2 fingers. He nods. Transaction complete. You take your second bite. The skewer is warm in your hand, the dumplings turning stickier with each chew. There's a comfort in the repetition. Bite, chew, breathe. No spices to complicate things. No broth to distract you. Just the humble satisfaction of starch and glaze. The old man finally looks at you, eyes barely visible beneath his heavy brows.
Used to be, dango sellers walked the streets, he says, ringing little bells. Folks would run out with coins still clutched in their sleep. He taps his foot on the ground, making a dull chime, imitating the bell, maybe, or calling back something only he remembers. Now they come here, he adds, the ones who can't sleep, the the ones who don't want to dream. You don't ask what he means. You already know. There's a specific kind of sweetness that works like armor. Not too bright, not too joyful, just enough. He hands you a second skewer without comment. You didn't ask for one, but it would be rude to decline. This time, you notice how the glaze darkens at the edges, where the sugar starts to edge toward bitterness. It cuts the sweetness just enough. You chew, slower now, letting your tongue find every note, molasses, smoke, maybe even a whisper of mirin. People forget, the old man mutters, that food is time, not just energy, not just taste, time. He points to the griddle. This pan? 30 years. My father's before that. You can taste the nights it's seen. You just have to be quiet. You chew more quietly, as if that will help. A breeze slips down the steps and stirs the edges of his cloth apron. Somewhere in the distance, a bamboo flute starts to play. The melody is faint but persistent, like a thread being pulled through the hem of the night. The old man's head tilts toward the sound. Used to be a girl who played that tune on this street, he murmurs, every night at this time. She vanished one spring, but the song still comes. He doesn't say more. He doesn't need to. You finish the second skewer and set the stick carefully on the tray beside the others. The sweetness still coats your teeth, and you find yourself licking your lips slowly, not wanting it to end. The man leans back, his knees cracking audibly. You can go now, he says, not unkindly. You've had your share. You bow, and he doesn't bow back, just turns back to his griddle where the next set of dumplings already sizzles and sings. As you step back into the alley, the moonlight catches on the glaze still glistening on your fingertips. You don't wipe it off. Instead, you let it stay, like a souvenir or a mark of entry into a part of the night that most people never see. You walk slower now, not out of fatigue, but reverence. Every bite you've tasted tonight feels like a stepping stone in this nocturnal path through Edo, where each dish carries more than flavor. It carries history and silence, and the quiet intimacy of strangers who don't need to speak. Ahead, a paper lantern flickers to life, drawing you onward. And the scent waiting for you now? It's frying batter. A different kind of comfort. A new page in this midnight menu.
The scent is unmistakable. Oil, flour, and something golden transforming inside hot bubbles. You follow it like a sleepy moth, weaving through the narrow alleys until it leads you to a wooden kiosk half hidden behind a laundry line. The stand is barely wider than a futon, but its roof sags charmingly with age, and its paper lantern glows a soft orange that looks like the yolk of a poached egg. Inside, a woman in her 50s stands barefoot on a raised plank, her sleeves tied high, hands moving in smooth, circular gestures over a pot of oil. She doesn't notice you right away. She's focused, no, entranced by the flickering movements of whatever's floating in the pan. You wait. There's something sacred in not interrupting a cook mid-fry. Only when she gently lifts a round morsel with a pair of bamboo chopsticks and places it on a slatted tray does she look up. She nods. Koroke, she says simply. Potato croquette, the humble, crunchy pillow of the working-class evening. She sets a fresh one on a small square of paper, folds the paper in two like a letter, and hands it to you. It's hot, painfully so, but you cradle it anyway, the paper beginning to absorb some of the oil that seeps through. Your first bite cracks audibly. The crust gives way to creamy mashed potato mixed with specks of onion, slivers of carrot, and possibly, maybe, just a trace of minced meat. You chew, and everything inside your mouth sighs. It tastes of home, of cheap school lunches, of modest kitchens and quiet pride. People eat these on the way home from work, the woman says, already shaping the next patty. But you're not going home. It's not a question. It's just a fact she observes, like the time of night or the sound of your chewing. No one out this late is headed home, she adds. You don't deny it. The second bite is better than the first, because now your tongue knows where to look. The pepper hits gently at the back, and the onion's sweetness lingers longer. You're sure there's nutmeg in there too, though it hides well. She drops another korokke into the oil. It sizzles, sending up droplets that sparkle in the lantern light like tiny fireworks. She doesn't flinch, just fans the pot with a palm leaf paddle, more ritual than necessity. There's a theory, she says casually, that the Japanese korokke came from French croquettes, brought here during the Meiji era. Others say it was the Dutch sneaking in recipes with their spices and their science. She shrugs. Historians still argue whether the first korokke used beef or fish. But everyone agrees on one thing. It made people feel full. And back then, that was the most important flavor.
She hands you another. You didn't ask, but you accept it like a prayer. This one is even crispier. She must have used fresh breadcrumbs, the kind that puff slightly in oil and shatter in the best way. The filling is hotter than before, and you're forced to breathe carefully between bites. You wouldn't believe how many stories have started with this food, she says. Men confessing love, children begging forgiveness, women deciding to leave. She stares into the oil again, as if reading something hidden in the bubbles. Once, she continues, a thief came here after a job, still had the money in his sleeve, ate 2 korokke, paid extra, and disappeared. She pauses. Next night, he came back, left the money on the counter and turned himself in. You blink, not sure whether to laugh or nod solemnly. He said it was the kindness and the temperature, she finishes, dropping another patty into the oil. Said it reminded him of his mother. You take the last bite and hold it in your mouth for a moment before swallowing. The crust has softened, but that only makes the contrast between chew and cream more satisfying. You lick your fingers discreetly, then wipe them on the paper, though the oil has already marked your skin with its scent. I don't use pork, only vegetables and a bit of fish. For the monks, they pass through here sometimes. You glance around, half expecting to see a bald head and saffron robe. But tonight, it's just you. She hands you a small cup of tea, roasted barley by the smell. It's cold but comforting, earthy and toasty, like the color brown had decided to become a drink. Most stands are closed by now. They say midnight is when the city gives up pretending to be polite. You nod. Because she's right. Edo at night doesn't pretend. It shows its real face. Quiet, worn, warm in pockets and indifferent in others. It smells like oil and soot and blossoms and sweat. And in those smells, something honest lives. She takes a small cloth and begins wiping the counter slowly, not to clean, but to end. Her movements tell you that your time here is almost up. You bow. She bows lower. Come back if your heart gets loud again, she says, folding another paper square for the next stranger who might wander through. You return to the alley, the scent of fried starch clinging to your sleeves like affectionate ghosts. A gust of wind carries the faint trace of something new, something steaming and meaty. You follow. And as you do, your belly is full, but you're not done. Because tonight, in Edo, midnight lasts as long as your feet are willing to wander. Your feet carry you forward without asking permission from your mind. It's how things work now. Your thoughts trail behind your body, which itself is merely obeying scent, texture, flickering light, and that peculiar sensation of being in a world that doesn't belong to clocks anymore. You drift toward the river, not the busy Sumida with its barges and tea houses, but one of the smaller canals, narrow and curved like a painted stroke through the city. Lantern reflections dance on its surface like koi with nowhere to be. And just ahead, beside a makeshift dock, You find a squat little boat tied loosely to a pole, its interior lit by nothing more than a stub of candle in a clay bowl. At the bow of the boat sits a woman, her face half obscured by a wide straw hat, her hands wrapped around a steaming wooden box balanced on her knees. She doesn't look up as you approach, but somehow you know it's allowed. The aroma escapes the box in gentle puffs, a broth heavy with miso, softened radish, and something you can't name but recognize, like a song you knew before you were born. "Oden," she says softly. "Have some." You sit on the dock, your legs hanging over the edge like a child at a pond. She opens the box and offers you a wooden skewer. You take it. It's daikon, glistening, golden from the broth, warm enough to fog your vision slightly as it nears your lips. You bite into it, and it yields completely. No resistance at all. The inside is tender, soaked through, its flavor not sharp like raw radish, but mellow, almost melancholy. You chew slowly. The broth stays on your tongue. You can tell the quality of oden by the daikon. If the daikon is right, the rest is safe. She hands you another skewer. This time, it's a piece of konnyaku, a jelly-like square made from yam flour. It's wobbly, slightly bouncy, and completely tasteless on its own, yet now it holds the soul of the broth like a sponge. You bite it and feel the slight tension of its texture pushing back. Just a little, like a nudge from a shy friend. "Oden's always better at night," she murmurs, "when your thoughts have tired themselves out, but your stomach hasn't." Steam curls upward between you, becoming a bridge, a curtain, and a companion all at once. Historians still argue whether oden started as temple fare or fisherman's fuel, but I say it came from loneliness. You pause, and she stirs the broth gently, watching tiny bubbles rise and disappear. Not the sad kind of loneliness, she clarifies, the kind that lets you breathe.
You look down at your skewer. Another piece waits. This one a soft-boiled egg, stained brown from long hours in broth. You bite in and the yolk melts without fanfare. It's humble, unapologetic. "There's a fisherman," she says, not looking up. "Comes here twice a week. Always takes the same 3 pieces, egg, tofu, chikua. Never speaks. But once, when I asked why those 3, he said they were his mother's favorites. She died when he was 10. She stirs again, more gently this time, as if trying not to disturb something sleeping. "Food like this doesn't belong to chefs," she says. "It belongs to memory." You nod, because tonight everything seems to belong to memory. Even the wooden slats beneath you feel like they've held countless pairs of tired legs. She hands you a final piece, a delicate pouch of tofu skin tied shut with a strip of kelp. You bite, and warm broth bursts onto your tongue, along with bits of rice and slivers of mushroom hidden inside. A little surprise, a little kindness. "People think oden is just a winter food," she muses, "but that's because they don't know how it feels on a summer night, when your heart is too warm and your body too tired." A breeze moves through the canal, rippling the surface and briefly stealing the candle's flame. She relights it without comment, using a small ember kept tucked in a shell. You both sit in silence for a while. Not awkward silence, the kind that wraps around you like a shawl. Finally, she closes the wooden box and sets it beside her. "That's enough," she says. You bow slightly, your lips still tasting of broth, your heart heavy in the best possible way. You stand, and she does not. You begin to walk away. Then you hear her say, barely above the water's murmur, "Come back when the moon is a bowl again." You don't answer.
You just look up, and sure enough, the moon is round tonight. The perfect circle. A promise waiting to empty, then fill again. You keep walking. The street turns sandy under your feet. Somewhere nearby, the smell of charcoal rises. Not the clean burn of white coals, but the darker, more pungent scent of wood half burned, still whispering its original shape. And beneath that, unmistakably, meat. You aren't hungry, but you are curious. Because in Edo, midnight is less of a time and more of a tide. And right now, it's pulling you toward grilled things on sticks.
The charcoal smoke thickens as you round a bend near a stone wall where the streets are broader, the sky more visible, and the scent of seared flesh clings to the air like steam on a bathhouse mirror. You follow it without urgency, just curiosity, that old friend who taps your shoulder and says, "What's that?" even when you already know. Up ahead, a simple cart rests beside a lantern-lit fence. No name, no banner, just a few low stools and a man with arms like tree branches, flipping skewers over an open flame with one hand and waving away moths with the other. His face is red from the heat and shiny with sweat, but his eyes gleam like someone who's exactly where he wants to be. He notices you, nods once, and gestures to an empty stool. "Yakitori," he says, as though announcing the winner of a long-forgotten sumo match. Chicken skewers, meat over fire. It's nothing fancy, just muscle, bone, salt, and flame. But right now, it smells like revelation. You sit, and he drops 2 skewers onto the grill for you without waiting for your order. They sizzle immediately, the fat snapping like tiny drums in the quiet air. "You strike me as someone who needs momo," he grunts. "Thigh meat, best cut, juicy," fights back. He turns the skewers with tongs made of bamboo, his motions sharp, practiced, automatic. The meat browns fast. You can hear the skin crisping before you even taste it. First bite, sweet soy glaze, sticky and just caramelized. Then smoke, then salt, then the unmistakable richness of dark meat. You chew slowly. It's simple. It's perfect. The flavor insists that you be present. "People used to think grilled meat was improper," he says, fanning the coals. "Buddhist law, you know? But even the monks sneak bites now and then." You raise an eyebrow. Historians still argue whether meat eating really was banned or just discouraged depending on which scroll you read. Me? I say the nose always wins over doctrine. He hands you another skewer, this one a surprise. Cartilage, maybe. You bite. Crunchy, bouncy, surprisingly addictive. It forces you to slow down, to chew thoughtfully. Your jaw earns this one. "That's nankotsu," he says proudly. "Chicken cartilage, texture of defiance." You nod because it's true. It tastes like something unapologetic, something that refuses to go down quietly. The other stools begin to fill. A pair of laborers from the canal, a woman in a faded blue yukata with a sleeping baby strapped to her back, an elderly man with no eyebrows. No one speaks much, only the sound of chewing and fire. The cook doesn't hurry. Each skewer is flipped, salted, brushed, turned again. He doesn't use timers, just his nose, his ears, his bones. "Been doing this since I was 13, he tells you. "Started with my uncle. He burned everything, including his own eyebrows." He grins. Maybe that old man is his uncle. There's a rhythm to it, like taiko drums. Flip on the inhale, salt on the exhale, sauce like a whisper. You watch him work and he's right. It's almost musical, like the meat is dancing its way toward becoming memory. He slides over a third skewer, liver, by the smell. You hesitate. "Try it," he says. "Tastes like bravery." You take a cautious bite. It's rich, earthy, a bit bitter, but not in a bad way, like coffee or an old love letter. You chew and let it linger. It tastes like something ancient.
Liver's not for everyone, he says, but those who love it with their soul. You're not sure where you fall yet, but the warmth in your chest suggests it's growing on you. The woman with the baby orders a skewer and hums as she eats. The laborers clink their cups of cheap sake. The old man just smiles at the fire, as if remembering something he forgot. You're all here for different reasons, but in this moment, you are one flavor: smoke, salt, meat, and night. There's a theory, the cook says, that yakitori came from roadside vendors feeding samurai after patrols, or maybe it was farmers feeding themselves after slaughter. Either way, it stuck. He shrugs. Because people remember what feeds them when they're most tired. Another skewer appears, this one brushed with tare sauce so thick it gleams like lacquer. You taste it and are hit with sweetness first, then heat, then the comfort of things slowly simmering. My tare's been going for 8 years, he says proudly. Add new soy sauce and sugar every week, but never throw it all out. It remembers you. You wonder what your own cooking would say if it could remember. Probably something like, burnt toast again? You chuckle under your breath. The cook notices, smiles. You're full now, he says. You realize he's right. Not just in the belly, but in the mind. Full in that quiet way that comes after good food, under an open sky, when your feet are tired, but your heart feels loose. You bow. He bows back. Come back when you want to remember what meat tastes like when it's honest. You rise. The coals crackle behind you, and your sleeve carries the scent of char with you like a souvenir stitched in smoke. You step back into the open street, where the wind is gentler now, and the sounds of Edo have shifted into a low hum. You pass a shrine. Its gates are closed, but a line of incense coils upward from within. And then another scent. Wheat. Ferment. Something bubbling. You smile. Someone's making noodles again. And this time, it's soba.
The scent of soba floats down the alley like a thread pulling you forward, faint, nutty, and quietly persuasive. It's not the bold aroma of grilled meat or the heavy perfume of fried oil. No, soba's fragrance is humble. It whispers to your hunger rather than shouting. And after all you've eaten tonight, that's exactly the tone your belly prefers. You follow your nose past shuttered shops and moon-drenched wooden fences until it leads you to a lantern hanging low outside a darkened storefront. The curtain above the door reads nothing flashy, just the characters for soba in a firm, no-nonsense hand. It tells you, we don't serve drama here, just noodles. Inside, a man leans over a wooden counter, his back curved like a question mark as he pulls noodles from boiling water. He wears no hat, no uniform, just a threadbare yukata and a towel looped around his neck like he forgot what it was originally for. His sleeves are rolled high, revealing wiry forearms, and his movements are smooth, slow, deliberate. He sees you, nods once, and gestures with his chin toward one of 3 wooden stools. You sit. No menu, no questions, just steam and silence. I make 2 kinds, he says, eventually, in a voice as dry as overcooked rice. Hot or cold? You glance at the simmering pot in front of him. You can already tell which direction the night is leaning. Hot, you say. He grunts approval. You're not sure whether it's because of your choice or simply the fact that you didn't ask any foolish questions like, do you have ramen? A lesser soul might. He turns back to the pot and you take a moment to observe. The walls are bare save for a single faded scroll in the corner, a painting of a mountain stream. It's not signed. It doesn't need to be. The only sound is water bubbling and the quiet rustle of noodles being portioned. You know, the man begins, as he lifts the soba from the boiling pot. There are people who think soba is just poor man's food, something to eat when rice is scarce. He pauses to dunk the noodles in a second pot, this one filled with warm dashi broth so clear you can see the bottom. But that's because they've never eaten it at the right time. He places the bowl in front of you. You lean over it slowly, like greeting an old friend. The steam warms your face. The aroma rises, a gentle mix of buckwheat, soy, and bonito flakes. A harmony, not a solo. Your chopsticks dip in. The noodles are light brown, speckled with flecks of the grain. You lift them carefully and slurp without apology. It's the kind of slurp that tells the chef, "I respect you, but I also can't wait." The noodles are soft, but not mushy, springy, confident.
The broth is clean, whispering umami without shouting. A little sweet, a little salty, and warm in that way that feels like a second layer of skin wrapping around your ribs. "You ever wonder," he says, ladling more broth for the next bowl, "why soba vendors used to shout in the streets?" You shake your head. "Soba! Soba!" they'd yell. He demonstrates, voice echoing briefly in the quiet space. Not because they were selling, but because they were surviving. You raise an eyebrow. See, soba was night food. Edo was prone to fires, right? Hundreds of them. Wooden houses, oil lamps, paper walls. It was basically a kindling collection. You nod. You've seen it in your wandering. The tightly packed neighborhoods, the endless flammability. So the government banned cooking fires at night. But soba could be made fast, minimal flame, no waste, just a pot, some broth, and a handful of noodles. He chuckles. Historians still argue whether the yatai stalls were a loophole or just tolerated because the guards liked soba too. He places a small dish next to you, tempura bits, tiny fried crispies called tenkasu. He doesn't ask, but you know what to do. Sprinkle them in, stir gently. They dance briefly before sinking, releasing pockets of flavor like popping fireworks. Your next bite is different now, richer, a bit indulgent. Soba is one of those things people think they understand, like poetry or their own dreams. He wipes the counter with a clean cloth, more ceremonial than functional. You know, there's cold soba with dipping sauce too. Good for hot days. Teaches patience. Hot soba, though. Hot soba is for souls in motion. You consider that as you sip the last of your broth. Maybe that's why you're here tonight. Not to arrive anywhere, just to stay in motion. The door slides open and a new figure enters. An old woman with thin sandals and a cloth bag clutched in one hand. She nods at you, then at the chef, then sits. No words exchanged. He serves her without asking. The same hot soba, the same quiet rhythm. You wonder how long she's been coming here. Maybe decades. Maybe centuries, if spirits have loyalty programs. The chef catches you watching. "She lost her husband last spring," he says, quietly. "Used to sit here together, one bowl each, slurped in sync." You say nothing. It feels like the only respectful choice. The woman finishes her noodles in slow, practiced motions. She bows deeply to the chef, stands, and walks back out into the night as if she's just left a temple. You do the same. The chef nods. Nothing more. Outside, the air has cooled slightly. Your breath puffs faintly in front of you. The night is thinning, ever so slowly, like broth after the last sip. But the scent of something sweet lingers down the alley. Rice, sugar, maybe roasted chestnut? You smile. Even full, you're still curious, and in Edo, that's all it takes to keep moving.
The cobbled path beneath your feet turns smoother, more worn, like the soles of sandals that have seen too many harvests. Your steps fall into the rhythm of the sleeping city. No urgency now, just the quiet hush of a place exhaling after a long, humid day. Lanterns have dimmed. Even the crickets seem to be taking breaks between their songs. But your nose catches something new in the air. Gentle, rich, toasty. It hovers at the edge of sweetness, tinged with the kind of warmth that could only come from mochi being grilled over coals. You follow it around a curve, where a tiny stand leans almost invisibly against the wall of a wooden building.
No sign, just the glow of one shy lantern and a hunched figure tending a hibachi. The old woman behind it has hair like storm clouds and fingers that move as if they're folding time itself. She's turning rectangular slabs of pounded rice, mochi, over a small flame. They hiss faintly, blistering at the edges, puffing in the middle like they've remembered to breathe. She doesn't look up as you approach. Instead, she carefully flips one of the mochi blocks, then brushes it with a thin glaze. Soy sauce and mirin, salty, sweet umami that carries on the night air like gossip. You sit on the bench in front of her stand, which creaks like it's not sure how it feels about visitors. She slides a fresh piece of grilled mochi onto a sheet of dried bamboo and hands it to you, without a word. It's simple, charred just enough to lend texture and sticky in that familiar, pleasant way that tries to glue your lips shut as you chew. The outside is crisp, the inside warm and gummy, like edible memory foam. The glaze clings to your fingertips. You don't mind. Mitarashi, she finally says, her voice like gravel wrapped in silk. Named after a river where spirits gather. You nod, because it makes sense. Everything tonight has felt a little haunted, but gently so. Like the past is following just a step behind you, humming a lullaby it half remembers. She points to a small clay jar on her counter. Black sugar syrup. Try dipping. You do. The syrup is thick, nearly opaque, and when it touches the mochi, it clings like shadow. Your next bite is darker, richer, with a burnt caramel edge that deepens the flavor, makes it linger. Used to make this for my brother. He'd eat 5 in one sitting. Said it kept nightmares away. You smile. You believe it. There's a kind of peace in eating something this patient, something that only exists because someone spent an hour pounding sticky rice into submission. Historians still argue whether mochi was first eaten as a sacred offering or just a farmer's way to store rice longer. But I think rice just wanted to be held together. You nod again, because tonight, even your food is full of philosophy. She offers a second serving, this time wrapped in seaweed. Isobiyaki, she calls it. The nori crackles against the warm mochi, adding a briny snap to the otherwise mellow bite. You chew thoughtfully, slowly. You've stopped keeping time altogether. I remember when merchants would queue here after the markets closed, she adds, gazing into the glowing coals. They'd argue about silks and taxes, but go quiet once the mochi hit their tongues. The coals pop softly, releasing a wisp of steam that carries a bit of sesame in it. You glance toward her shelf, where a tiny basket holds crushed sesame seeds. She follows your gaze and nods again, approvingly. Try it, she says, sprinkling a spoonful of sesame and sugar over a fresh piece of mochi. Sweet and nutty, good for those who walk far. You are one of those people now. You take a bite. The sesame crunches and the sugar melts. There's a warmth to it beyond temperature, a kind of affection. You imagine a child's birthday hundreds of years ago, candles not yet invented, just sesame mochi handed out to tiny hands. You swallow and your chest feels a little looser. The woman wipes her hands on a square of cloth older than some governments. You know why mochi's eaten at New Year? She asks. You shake your head, still chewing. Because it stretches, because it sticks, because it reminds you to keep going. She looks at you now, fully, with eyes that are all pupil and starlight. New Year, midnight, heartbreak, mochi's good for anything that asks you to begin again. You sit with that for a while. There's no need to rush. Even the moon seems to be dawdling, casting pale light over rooftops with all the urgency of a cat watching rain. Eventually, you rise. You bow. She bows lower. Come back when the seasons change, she says. And you will. Your hands are sticky, your step slow. but your heart is warm in that gooey grilled rice kind of way. You walk on, past a row of low houses and a narrow canal. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and goes quiet again, as if it remembered the time. But the night is not over. A faint flickering light dances ahead, accompanied by the unmistakable scent of roasted chestnuts and something sweetened beans. You grin, because now you know, even in Edo, dessert has sequels. Your feet carry you forward, but they no longer feel like they belong to you. They float a little now, untethered by weight or worry. Maybe it's the grilled mochi still warming your chest, or maybe it's the sense that you've passed through some invisible curtain where night turns deeper, quieter, and the world shrinks to only those who are still awake on purpose. Ahead, the soft yellow of an oil lantern flickers in the still air, casting shadows that sway like silk ribbons. The source is a humble pushcart stationed at the edge of a bridge, its wheels propped on bricks, its frame wrapped in a faded curtain to block the breeze. The vendor stands behind it, a thin, wiry man with sunken cheeks and a smile too big for his face. He wears a loose robe, its sleeves tied back, and his hands move constantly, stirring, scooping, wrapping. On the cart's tiny surface sits a shallow iron pan bubbling gently over charcoal. The scent hits you just as he notices your approach, not overpowering, but warm, inviting, like roasted chestnuts and simmering azuki beans had a secret meeting in the dark. "Sweet Odin," he says with a bow. "Or maybe you're the type who prefers yokan. I have both." You hesitate. Your mouth says yes before your stomach has time to debate. He chuckles. Wise choice. Midnight favors indulgence. He ladles a thick scoop of red bean stew, zenzai, into a small lacquered bowl. It glistens, the beans whole but soft, suspended in a syrupy broth that smells of molasses and warm stone. He drops in a few roasted chestnuts, their skins cracked and curling, then sets the bowl in front of you with the reverence of a monk offering incense. You sit on a low stool beside the cart. The bridge behind you groans faintly with the night wind. Across the canal, water laps against the stone pilings like a grandmother humming to herself. You take your first spoonful. The beans burst gently between your teeth, sweet, earthy, comforting. The chestnut follows, firm and mealy in that way only chestnuts can be, as though they're trying to remind you that trees make gifts too. "Used to be for offerings," he says, watching the steam rise. "Red beans scare away bad spirits. Color of blood, you know? Sacred stuff." You nod, still chewing. It makes sense. The bowl feels a bit like a warding charm disguised as dessert. Some say it started as a shrine ritual, but others think it was just a way for farmers to make winter feel less cruel. Historians still argue whether it was a festival food or a funeral one. You glance down at your bowl. It does taste a bit like both. Grief and joy, loss and warmth, all slow cooked into a single bite. He scoops something else into a new bowl, jelly-like, translucent, cut into perfect rectangles. "Yokan," he announces. "Red bean paste, set with agar. Originally Chinese, samurai favorite. Keeps well, travels better than most poets."
The yokan is sweet, but not in a cloying way. More like a gentle reminder of sugar. It melts slowly on the tongue, cool and dignified, leaving behind a whisper of bean and seaweed. You never thought whisper of seaweed would sound appealing, but here you are. Some noble families had entire storage rooms just for yokan, he says, tapping a wooden box. Kept for emergencies or guests, sometimes both. You imagine that, an emergency so bad it requires bean jelly to resolve it. You wonder how many modern disasters could be softened with just the right confection.
The vendor sees your expression and chuckles again. Don't laugh. You'd be surprised how many arguments have been settled with sweets, or caused by them. You nod. You've seen enough family dinners to agree. He hands you a final treat, a small ball wrapped in a leaf. Sakura mochi, he says. Out of season, but I keep a few for dreamers. You unwrap it carefully. The pink rice is sticky and floral. The red bean paste inside, smooth and slightly salty. The pickled cherry leaf wraps around it like a parent refusing to let go. You take a bite, and suddenly springtime is in your mouth. Not full bloom, but the early part, when petals are still shy and the air tastes of thawing earth. It's not just food, it's memory engineered into bite-sized nostalgia. The vendor leans on his cart, arms crossed. You eat enough of these, and you start to forget what sadness tasted like. You believe him, because for a brief moment, the chill of night no longer reaches your skin. Even the moon seems to be leaning closer, peering down to see what's in your bowl. Behind you, the water murmurs. A distant bell chimes the hour, softer now, as if even time has started whispering. A pair of delivery boys passes, laughing under their breath. One of them waves at the vendor, who waves back with a nod. No words, just familiarity, like the kind that lives in the smell of sweet beans. You sip the last of your zenzai, wiping the edge of the bowl with your thumb. It's not clean, but it feels final. You thank the vendor. He bows so deeply you feel your own spine reacting in sympathy. Next time, he says, I'll save you the sakura mochi with 2 petals. Rare, brings luck. You don't doubt it. In this city, at this hour, even superstition tastes good. You stand. Your joints creak faintly, but they're not protesting, just announcing. You begin walking again, the sweetness still blooming on your tongue. The bridge arches behind you like a shrug, and the lanterns ahead flicker their soft yellow rhythm. You think you hear the clack of wooden sandals up ahead, and laughter, soft, distant, accompanied by the scent of roasted tea. Because, of course, in Edo, dessert never really ends. It just steeps. The clatter of Geta sandals fades into the darkness behind you, like a closing parenthesis on a sentence you didn't realize was complete. But the story of the night is still being told, somewhere ahead, in the soft rustle of fabric, the gurgle of kettle water, and the scent, yes, unmistakably now, of roasted tea leaves curling in steam. You drift toward it like a leaf floating downstream, carried more by curiosity than intention. The alley opens into a tiny courtyard, hemmed in by tall wooden fences. A small bench sits in the corner beneath a maple tree, its leaves whispering secrets into the night air. Opposite the bench, a modest tea stand glows faintly from within, its Norin curtain fluttering just enough to reveal a pot, a brazier, and a pair of stools. No customers, just the quiet presence of tea and time. The host is a woman of indeterminate age, anywhere from 30 to eternity. Her face is calm, unreadable, like a blank poem waiting for interpretation. She wears a plain indigo kimono and a white sash, her sleeves folded back with the precision of someone who understands ritual not as performance, but as rhythm. She gestures silently for you to sit. You do, the stool giving only the gentlest creak, as though it too has learned not to interrupt. She begins without speaking. First, the heating of water. The brazier lets off soft pops, the kind that sound like fireflies being born. She places a scoop of greenish-brown tea leaves into a ceramic pot. Hojicha, you think. Roasted green tea, the scent already rich and nutty,
with a toasty undertone that promises calm more than caffeine. The cup she hands you is not elaborate. No gold leaf, no intricate designs, just a smooth, weighty vessel shaped to sit perfectly in your palms. It's warm, even before the tea touches it. You take a sip. The flavor is subtle at first, light, almost shy. But then it grows bolder, stretching across your tongue with hints of smoke, of earth, of sun-dried leaves and well-worn books. It's the kind of taste that insists you slow down, that makes you aware of your breath, of your hands, of the sound of your own swallowing. The tea host watches you, but not in judgment. She simply waits, present, but not pressing, like the moon behind a cloud. You know, tea wasn't always for peace, she finally says, her voice like worn silk. You raise your eyebrow. In early Edo, tea was often ceremonial, yes, but also strategic. Warlords hosted tea gatherings to measure each other, see who trembled while whisking, who chose the wrong bowl, who poured too quickly. She pours more tea for you. The sound is gentle, like rain on straw. Historians still argue whether tea saved lives or cost them. You glance at your cup, briefly imagining a daimyo spilling his matcha and losing a province. It seems absurd, and yet strangely believable. She smiles faintly, sensing your thought. She says, "This tea," she taps the pot, "is humble. Roasted, not steamed. Everyday tea. No ceremony. Just comfort."
You nod. The second sip is even smoother, almost sweet. Your shoulders loosen. It came from Kyoto originally, she adds, a way to make older leaves drinkable. Now, it's the choice for quiet nights. You believe her. Your night has become progressively quieter, like a volume knob slowly dialing toward mute. On the small shelf behind her, you notice a stack of tiny boxes, wooden, hand-labeled. She follows your gaze. "Confections," she says simply, "for balance." She opens one, revealing 3 wagashi, traditional sweets, one shaped like a plum blossom, one like a folded fan, the last a simple cube dusted in kinako, roasted soybean flour. You reach for the kinako cube. It crumbles slightly as you lift it, the powder clinging to your fingertips. You bite, and the texture is soft, like memory. Sweet, but faintly savory, too. It pairs with the tea like a well-timed pause in conversation. Wagashi were designed to match the season, each flavor a reminder of something outside. Blossoms, snow, wind. You wonder what this one is supposed to represent. Perhaps the hour itself, sweet, faint, drifting. She offers you the blossom next. It tastes of red bean and plum, tart and floral. You nod appreciatively. "I once served tea to a blind poet," she says. "He tasted a wagashi shaped like the moon and said, 'It feels like cold poetry in my mouth.'" You chuckle softly. You understand what he meant. There's something ineffable about food that's more gesture than meal. She pours again, a third cup. This time, the flavor is even lighter, almost ghostly. You think you're drinking a memory of tea, not the tea itself. Hoji means roast, but some say it also means release. You close your eyes for a moment. You feel it, the release, of tension, of time, of whatever worry you had when this walk began. The last confection she offers is a yuzu jelly, cut in a perfect square. It glistens in the light. The citrus hits your tongue like a quiet laugh, refreshing and unexpected. She clears the cups without a sound. The tea is finished.
but the warmth stays. You bow your head in thanks. She bows deeper. As you stand, she speaks one final time. Next time, come earlier. I'll serve you new leaves, still green with spring. You step back out into the night, the hush even more profound after the tea. The breeze now carries the scent of pine and stone. The moon has climbed higher, its silver light pooling like sake on the street. Your body feels slower now, but not tired, just spacious. You continue walking, not with purpose, but with curiosity, the kind of movement that only tea and silence can unlock. And ahead, somewhere faint, you hear a low hum. Is it someone singing? Or maybe it's the gentle drumbeat of mochi being pounded in the early morning, because in Edo, even the end of night sounds like preparation for another beginning.
The hum becomes clearer now, a rhythmic, deep thud, spaced evenly like a giant's heartbeat. You follow it instinctively, as one might follow thunder across a quiet plain, not out of fear, but because something in it feels ancient, anchored, honest. Each beat draws you closer until your steps align with the sound. 1, 2, 1, 2. You are walking in time with history. You turn a corner and find yourself in a modest square between two row houses. It is not lit by lanterns, but by the glow of a fire pit and the silvery light of the moon. The source of the sound is unmistakable now, a mortar as wide as a barrel, with a man wielding a wooden mallet nearly the length of a canoe oar. He lifts it high, then thud, drives it down into the sticky rice within the bowl. His movements are slow, deliberate, and as graceful as a dance. Beside him, a young boy waits with wet hands and quick reflexes, flipping the steaming mass between strikes to keep it from sticking. This is mochi pounding, or mochitsuki, an old tradition most often seen around New Year's Eve, but occasionally performed deep into the night by those who keep old habits alive just for the sake of remembering. The man pauses when he sees you. He gestures to a stool. Without a word, you sit, and the boy hands you a warm cloth to wipe your fingers, because inevitably you'll be touching mochi tonight. Late for this, aren't you? He finally says, not unkindly. You shrug. Ah, he nods, but night is when the rice listens best. You don't question it. He lifts the mallet again and brings it down. The rice groans under the weight. You can smell the steam now, earthy, slightly sweet, as though the rice has been infused with breath itself. Mochi's strange, he muses. Start with plain rice, pound it until it stops being rice, ends up something else entirely. Still food, but more memory than meal. You lean closer, watching the strands form, stretch back into themselves. Historians still argue whether mochitsuki began as a Shinto ritual or a farmer's boredom, he says, lifting the mallet again. Doesn't matter now. It's a heartbeat. Every thud says, we're still here. The boy flips the mochi again, skillfully avoiding the descending mallet. His hands are pink from heat, but he grins with every turn. The rhythm resumes. Thud, flip, thud, flip. A two-person meditation under the stars. Eventually, the pounding ends. The mochi is smooth, glossy, nearly translucent. The boy scoops a lump with wooden paddles and hands it to you on a bamboo leaf. It's steaming, impossibly soft, and utterly silent in your hand. He offers a small bowl of kinako, roasted soybean flour mixed with sugar. You dip the mochi gently and take a bite. It stretches, as if reluctant to leave itself. The texture is airy and dense, like chewing cloud-stuffed velvet. The kinako dusts your lips and clings to the roof of your mouth, faintly nutty and warm.
The man watches you. Good? You nod. But he already knows. Used to be, he continues, People would gather to pound mochi as a family, neighbors, even rivals. You can't really argue when you're trying not to lose a finger. You laugh softly. Each region has its own style, he says. Some put in mugwort, others mix with shrimp. You ever try mochi with daikon and soy sauce? You haven't, but now you want to. Mochi's stubborn, he says. It holds together, sticks to everything, just like old Edo. The boy begins shaping small mochi rounds, dusting them with flour and placing them in a row on a wooden tray. You notice they're slightly uneven, as if each one carries its own personality. He gives you another, this one with red bean inside. It's tucked like a secret, the filling warm and smooth against the stretch of rice. You take slow bites, savoring every chew. There's no rush, nothing ahead of you but more silence, and maybe another kind of dessert hiding behind the next corner. The man pours you a small cup of roasted barley tea, mugicha. It's cold, earthy, and vaguely nutty, cutting through the sweetness with a grounding finish. You sit between bites of mochi, letting the rhythm of food and drink settle over you like a second skin. The moon is nearly overhead now, casting long silver shadows across the square. Somewhere nearby, a rooster gives a confused, premature crow. You all ignore it politely. You ever try to speak while eating mochi? The boy asks suddenly. You raise an eyebrow. Dangerous, the man says, grinning. Chokes more samurai than swords ever did. You laugh again, nearly choking yourself in irony. He nods, vindicated. There was a saying once, only the wise swallow twice. I think they made that up just to scare children. The night deepens. The tray of mochi grows fuller, then slowly empties again as others wander in. A few old men, a pair of women in yukata, even a delivery rider with his sleeves rolled to the elbow. They join silently. Some watch, some pound, some just eat and vanish into the dark like they were never there at all. It's not a celebration. There's no music, no fanfare, just the shared rhythm of a city still chewing its memories. One of the women offers you a final piece. This one dusted in black sesame, the flavor bolder, toastier. You eat slowly, closing your eyes. The chewing slows your thoughts. The stickiness keeps you in the moment. You exhale. Used to think food was just fuel, but this is story. This is glue. This is ritual pretending to be snack. He bows deeply to you. The others do too. You bow back. No one says goodbye. They simply drift off, one by one, disappearing down side streets like whispers leaving a room. The boy hands you one last warm cloth for your fingers. You step away from the square. The sound of the mallet resumes behind you, soft now, almost far away. Thud, flip, thud, like the last beats of a drum fading into sleep. The mochi sits warmly in your stomach. The barley tea lingers on your tongue, and the quiet hum of Edo continues to wrap around you like a futon pulled gently to the chin. Because in this city, even pounding rice can sound like a lullaby.
You walk now not with the feet of a traveler, but with the drift of a dreamer. Your pace is slower, your senses softened, your breath blending gently with the stillness of the hour. Midnight has passed, but the night still lingers, reluctant to yield its throne to dawn. Ahead, the soft glimmer of lantern light seeps from a row of low wooden stalls arranged in a crescent. They seem almost to glow from within, not just from fire, but from memory. You've seen dozens of vendors tonight, grilling, stirring, pounding, boiling, but this place is quieter, more ritual than business. These stalls don't shout, they whisper. As you approach, the first thing you notice is the scent, a layering of sweetness, malt, and earth. Someone is toasting millet cakes. Another is steeping azuki beans into a thick, slow-simmered paste. And someone, somewhere, is brewing amazaki. You gravitate toward the source, a small stall half hidden by morning fog, where a woman with a round face and soot-kissed fingers tends a pot nearly as wide as her body. The liquid inside is milky, pale and steaming. She ladles it gently into a cup,
and offers it to you with a smile that feels older than the street you're standing on. You take a sip. It's thick but smooth, barely fermented, faintly sweet, like a cross between rice pudding and warm cloud. The Yamazaki tastes like kindness, like a blanket draped over cold shoulders. The rice is softened into suspension, its grains floating like tiny lanterns on a still river. Amazaki was once a summer drink, she says softly, to help with heat, but in Edo, we drink it any time the soul needs quiet. You nod. It makes sense. You hadn't realized your soul had been so noisy. She hands you a small bowl of zenzai, sweet red bean soup with chewy mochi floating like islands in the dusk. You lift the bowl and the steam kisses your face. The mochi yields easily, the beans melting like memory. Every spoonful draws you deeper into stillness. Some say zenzai means the good fortune of all, she offers. Others think it's from a dialect word for ease. Historians still argue, she adds, chuckling gently, but maybe both are true. A delivery man arrives behind you and places a small wrapped parcel on her counter. She thanks him without turning, without ceasing the stir of her amazaki. Clearly, she's used to multitasking with grace. You sit for a while on the bench next to her stall, sipping and chewing and listening to the breath of the city. There's no clamor now, no shouts or bells or songs, just the soft crackle of firewood and the distant clop of a horse's hooves. Even the wind seems hushed, tiptoeing through the alleys like a guest afraid to overstay.
She gives you a second cup. You don't ask for it, but she seems to know you need it. The amazake is warmer this time, or maybe your body is just more receptive now, like earth thawing under the first spring sun. You sip again, slower. A cat slinks by, tail high, eyes knowing. It pauses beside your bench, then curls up without asking permission. You do not object. The woman offers you one final treat, a Corinto, a crunchy, deep-fried stick of dough coated in brown sugar glaze. It cracks beneath your teeth, sweet and earthy, the kind of snack that keeps monks and merchants alike going through long nights of contemplation. This city, she says, has thousands of mouths, and yet every bite has a purpose. You nod. You feel it now. Every flavor tonight has been a note in a lullaby. Every texture a story. Every vendor a page turned in a book you hadn't meant to read but now can't put down. You finish your last sip, pat the cat gently, and stand. The woman bows. You bow back. Walk well, she says simply. Not goodbye, not farewell, just a reminder. You step into the night once more. The lanterns grow fewer now, the air cooler. A breeze has begun to rise, brushing your skin with the faintest prelude of morning. You pass a carpenter asleep under his awning, his tools lined like soldiers beside him. A paper seller snoozes with his head against the wall, unread sheets fluttering like drowsy butterflies. Even the stray dogs are curled up in tight, respectful silence. You take a final turn into a narrow street you don't quite remember choosing. It opens into a small courtyard lit only by the moon. A single plum tree stands at the center, its leaves silver-edged, its blossoms half asleep. You sit beneath it. For a while you do nothing. Just breathe. Just listen. The hum of Edo has faded into a lull. The food in your belly has turned to comfort. The flavors have all said their goodbyes. Your legs, though tired, feel lighter. Your mind, though full, feels still. You close your eyes. And in that quiet, you realize something. Midnight in Edo is not the end of night. It's the middle of a dream.
And now, the streets of Edo lie quiet behind your eyes. The echo of footsteps fades like mist over water, and the lantern glow that once guided you through the alleys dims to a warm hush beneath your lids. Every scent you encountered, grilled soy, steamed rice, toasted tea, softens into memory, like colors in twilight, bleeding into one another until they vanish into calm. You've walked far tonight.
Your body has loosened, your breath has grown slower, and your thoughts, once curious and alert, now drift like paper boats on a sleepy river. There's nothing else you need to do. No more corners to turn, no final snack to chase. Just stillness, gently unfolding in the cradle of your senses. The moon that watched over you now pulls the last tide of your attention inward. Its light no longer illuminates stone paths or food stalls, but rather the quiet temple of your inner stillness. Each heartbeat slows, each breath deepens, and the stories you've tasted melt into dreams like mochi dissolving on the tongue. So let go now. Let the rhythm of Edo's midnight lull you into the deepest part of rest. There are no more vendors calling, no more shadows shifting, only the hush of warm rice, the echo of distant laughter, and the soft comfort of your own quiet breath. You've made it through the night. You've walked with Noodles, mochi, amazake, and time itself. Sleep well, traveler.